Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is another head-to-head duel. So this time I have on the left the Phoibos Ocean Master. This one is model PY005A. This is a watch that I've reviewed a little while back, and it is provided kindly by the Phoibos Watch Company. The Ocean Master originally came out in quartz, but then they released this nice automatic version with a steel bracelet, which is very much my particular presence and preference. On the right, I have the Orient M-Force Bravo. So this one, again, was kindly provided by Samuel, a local enthusiast and supporter who has kindly come forward and offered quite a number of pieces of his collection for me to feature and review on the channel. So thank you again, Samuel, for making this available. This is a watch that I very much enjoyed and reviewed not so long ago. So why have I chosen to feature these two particular watches? Well, I think in my mind, they're both pretty heavy hitting, tough dive watches. They are both above 200 grams on the wrist, which if you have experience with watch weights, is it's pretty heavy. You definitely realize it's there. You won't forget it. It definitely makes its presence felt. They're both around the 300 to 350 mark. The Phoibos usually sells for around the 300 USD mark, whereas the Orient I've found for between 320 to about 360 USD on resale or fresh sale, Amazon, for example, these days. So around the same price point, around the same toughness, 316L. Steel, of course, you're not going to expect anything different. They both have pretty tough looking screw-in case backs there. Steel bracelets. They have screw-in crowns, of course. This one actually has the additional helium escape valve. Sapphire crystal for both unidirectional 120 click dive style bezel and pretty fair lume. The Phoibos actually has a super luminova. I think it's a BGW9 actually, whereas the Orient, I don't know whether it's exactly the same as Seiko, but it performs very close to Seiko Lumi Bright style lume. How is the Chinese newcomer going to compare with the established Japanese in-house manufacturer Orient? So let's get into the comparison without further ado. First up, caliber. Okay, movement. Now the Phoibos, if you know this watch, you know it's actually a Seiko movement. It's actually the NH35A. Both these are 21,600 beats per hour Japanese movements, around 40 hours on the reserve, 24 joules versus 22 joules in the Orient 4T N5A movement. Now the movement in this one is also used in Orient's top saturation divers. This one does have a power reserve dial. They both hack. They're both manual wind and quick set date and whatnot. So a lot of these things are similar. I think because this is a true in-house movement, you have to give the nod to the Orient. I've given 8 to the Orient. I've given 7 to the Seiko NH35A, which is the mark I have given this caliber before. Next up, design. Okay, so I think they're both very functional divers. The Phoibos uses an OEM equipment manufacturer that is the same as Deep Blue. That's what they've told me. Which is why this looks almost exactly the same as the Deep Blue ProTac 1000 meter diver. So I think the design is pretty good. It's pretty functional. It's a very rugged design, despite the fact that it's all curves and no straight angles. I've actually quite liked this design, but I think because the Orient is fully original, it's got its own style. It's not copying anyone else, and nothing else is exactly like this or even very close to this. I've given the design nod to the Orient here, and not to forget the Orient also, is again in-house manufacturer. They do it top to bottom. Really, I think it's fair for me to give the design nod here again to Orient. 8 to Orient and 7 to Phoibos for design. I think they've put good function. The lume is almost the same, and they've got the dive design bezel. I just think the Orient edges slightly ahead here. Next up, quality. Okay, so I think they're both good. I think the Phoibos just falls behind slightly in overall fit and finish. It's going to be very hard for me to convey this on camera, right? And it's pretty good as as I pan this around, you won't see any direct faults. But if I look at it very closely, just look at the transitions between surfaces, the fineness of the finishing, just the precision. I think Orient, in my mind and in my hands, I think no doubt that they do fit and finish just that bit better. It's actually discernible to me. So very hard for me to convey this with camera, because you can't feel, you can't see the fine detail, but I think this one is actually a little bit better. Also, I have to say this is a triple ISO certification, right? It's not just a 6425 for dive, it's also anti-magnetic and shock resistant, whereas Phoibos has none of those, So I think quality-wise, what they put into it, you have to give it to Orient as 7 versus 8. In fact, you might even give 9 because of how much they packed into the Orient. Next up, styling. Okay, this is very subjective. I'm going to go with Phoibos here. I just like the actual overall look of this design. I guess you can call it the deep blue ProTac, but they say it's actually the same OEM, so it is not a copied design as such. I like the design, the helium valve there, the overall look, the ruggedness. I think the bezel looks better. I mean, Orient is pretty good. Don't get me wrong. I really like the overall design and feel of the Orient. I just think the bezel is a bit tacky. In fact, that's the biggest criticism that I've received on comments on this watch on the review, is that the bezel is pretty tacky. This black PVD, I would have probably preferred them to leave it as steel and maybe just made color for the numerals imprinted on there, or use this traditional bezel insert, either way. Overall, I think look-wise, style-wise, I have to say my preference is towards the Phoibos, but you may prefer the Orient. This is actually quite subjective. 8 for the Phoibos and 7 for the Orient is what I've gone this time. Next up, performance. Okay, I think no real doubt here. I think the Phoibos is the better tool watch overall. It's one of the best tool watches actually that I've had in hand. 1,000 meter rated. Manufacturer tested, not ISO certified, but manufacturer tested to 1,000 meters. It's got the helium escape valve. The loom is pretty much equivalent, I think. In my, I guess, subjective experience, they are both pretty good. So I think the Orient is very solid. It's ISO certified, as I've mentioned, but it is only certified and rated to 200 meters. It's got a bezel that I think the bezels are the same in terms of feel and fit and finish. I just think the overall, functional feel and 1,000 meter rating of the Phoibos, I do have to go to the Phoibos for just the pure tool watch performance that it represents. Okay, next up, versatility. Right, they're both very heavy steel watches. They're both pretty big, and they definitely make themselves known on your wrist. I'm just going to put this on. This is the smaller of the two watches, smaller and lighter. But it really does make itself felt and known on your wrist, no doubt about it. But I think the Phoibos is just slightly more quiet. It's just a bit quieter. The Orient is loud. It's got that orange highlights. It's got that black PVD. It's actually got a louder presence, a larger presence. If you look at the watch itself, it's got a wider bezel, or at least conceptually and perceptively, it's got a wider bezel. It's got a wider dial. So it's actually a louder watch. So this one just sneaks in a little bit better in terms of versatility. They're both not super versatile, I have to say. They're both heavy and large, but I've given 7 to the Phoibos and 6 to the Orient on this category. Right, next up, durability. 316L steel, very solid. They're both 200 plus grams. The Orient, in fact, is about 10 grams heavier. They're both extremely robust feeling. They both have sapphire as the glass on the top. I can't separate this two. I think they're really the same in terms of the feel, the toughness, the durability, I guess perception that I have of these watches. So I've given 8 to both. Let me just put this on in case you want to see that as a wrist shot as well. Big You know, tough. Look at that bracelet. It's just solid. Definitely a durable watch. And for me, they are the same. So 8 for both Phoibos and Orient in this category in durability in my mind. All right, next up, value. Okay. I think they are also both pretty good for what you get, right? You know, the Phoibos is slightly cheaper, not a lot, less than 10%, I guess, on a good day. And if Orient, you find an expensive one, yeah, it's a bit more than 10% in terms of price difference, but they're both pretty good. I think Phoibos, you know, the solidity, right? You get a Japanese Seiko movement, you get, you know, testing to 1,000 meters. I think it's pretty good for what you get. I have given it a 7, but I think the Orient definitely edges ahead, right? This is a true horological manufacturer, triple ISO credentials for shock resistance, dive 200 meters, as well as the magnetic resistance, anti-magnetic rating. I have to give the value nod to the Orient here. You know, I think there's not much controversy in this particular category in my mind anyway. You know, 8 to the Orient, 7 to the Phoibos. All right, next up, brand, right? Brand prestige, brand, I guess, history and strength. Look, I've given 7 to Phoibos before. I've given 6 at other times. I'm going to go with 6 today. I think, you know, they're new, but they do show a lot of promise. I think a lot of integrity to what they are bringing in terms of how much they are packing in, the quality level that they are aiming for. You know, they've given a lot of sapphire with ceramic insert bezels. You know, I think the Great White is a fantastic watch, actually, still one of my favorites. This one is pretty good. You know, brand 6 for Phoibos. I think Orient, no doubt, has to take the win on the brand here. You know, it's a true established company, 1950, I believe, remains independent to this day. Yes, it is a subsidiary of the Seiko Epson Holdings Corporation, but it still remains an independent horological manufacturer, fully in-house. No doubt, I have to give at least 8 to a company with those particular credentials, and I'm happy to give 8 to Orient on this category. All right, guys, the last one here, X Factor. What have I gone for? Like, look, I think Phoibos is bringing something special, right? They do push the limits on the price point on what they can pack in. This one is not their I guess, most, how would you say, the best value watch that they put out. I don't think. It's pretty good steel, and you know, it's a 1,000-meter watch, and it's still sapphire and whatnot. So I think they do kind of represent something rather special in the Chinese watch scene. You know, there's not many that kind of like come toe-to-toe to what they are putting out. I've given 6 for Phoibos for those features, but they are very new and still have to establish a track record. Whereas Orient, you know, well, you know, it's got an aura around it. To me, you know, Orient as a name has been, I've been aware of this since I was a teenager as a company. It's really a very strong name. It just has an aura around it, and it's got a top caliber, you know, in this watch, as well as the fact that they do make all their own calibers and movements. I have to give the nod to Orient. In fact, you know, on thinking it again, you might argue you could give 8 to Orient in terms of X Factor. I got with 7. I think no doubt that you'd have to give the X Factor, at least for me. I think this one has a bit more special feeling towards it. So that's my, you know, marks here. All right, let's add it up. And if you've been going along, you've done that already. Right, close, but I think no doubt, as you've heard me talk about these watches, Orient does win, right? It does have more going for it. So in summary, you know, you got 2 very solid, true dive watches, you know, very good tool watches here. The Phoibos does have the 1,000-meter performance. It edges ahead on styling, in my opinion, and as well as versatility. But, you know, Orient comes through with the win. It's got the better caliber. It's got better finishing and quality, I think. It's got an original design, and it remains an established true horological manufacturer brand. So, you know, for all those features, the win goes to Orient today for this comparison. So guys, let me know what you think. You know, it's been interesting to compare these two. I think they are close in category, which is why I've chosen these watches. If you've got either of these, I'd be interested in your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the comparison as well. Guys, if you enjoy my videos, do consider subscribing. I put out new content every week, always aiming to be objective and unbiased about all things horology. Thank you for sticking with me, and as always, I will catch you next time.